Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Abdul Ghani from Independent News Pakistan. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a multi-billion dollar investment in Pakistan by the Chinese government and the Chinese companies. There are many and ample hopes in CPEC for the Pakistan economy and the Pakistan social structure as well. Today we are joined with the prominent social scientist and political scientist in the town, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, who is a prominent commentator in the national and international media, and he holds a specific specialization in the area. Today we will talk with him about these China-Pakistan relationships especially. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us. Doctor, before discussing in detail about the China-Pakistan economic corridor, I'll ask simply the importance of CPEC in the Pakistan and China relationships, particularly in the modern times when there is a lot of regional games happening in the region.
I think that CPEC has a political, economic, societal connectivity with China. So it's a big initiative in the two states' bilateral relationships. In that context, when we look about China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is also known as the flagship project of President Xi's initiative, Belt and Road Initiative, certainly in that context, it's an important, because BRI is an important initiative. And in the last 1 decade, the Chinese have worked it, and they have footprints in more than 120-30 countries without firing a single bullet. And it has 6 different corridors, and among of them, one is CPEC. So certainly, it is one of the important linchpin between the China and Pakistan relation. If you see that now what we call it, Pakistan-China strategic economic partnership. So that is the reason where the word, normally you heard it strategic partnership, and where the word is introduced, that strategic economic, that is because of the CPEC.
Perfect. Do you see the Gwadar port turning into the international business hub in the next coming 5 or 10 years?
Look, Gwadar port has potential today. Immediately it can generate the activity around the $10 billion activity. When we talk about Gwadar port as a free zone, and in that context there was an interesting study where one of the Pakistani senator, Salim Mandiwala, that he came up with this idea that if you have a refinery there, if you have a further investment there, within 3 to 4 years, you are in a position to generate $10 billion activity. This is a starting potential.
Fine.
And then, once you have that activity, then certainly it will be multiplied. Or then there will be a domino impact, domino economic impact. It will be sustainable and further grow like other big ports in the world.
Fine. When we are talking about Gwadar port, obviously Balochistan come into mind. The recent miscreants or the terrorist groups are very active in the region, and we have seen recently in the May 5 Chinese nationals and others were also killed. That basically hampers the CPEC activities. Do you think that the terrorism is fighting CPEC and the Gwadar port? Are the businesses happening there?
Terrorism or militancy, it has an impact not only on the CPEC alone, it has a negative impact on the Pakistan's economic prosperity. CPEC is a flashing, its projects are flashing, like this, that road, energy, other infrastructure, more visibility. Pakistan in its recent history, even after 1970s or 60s, first time we have seen a mega foreign direct investment. In the 70s there was no investment. Then from 79 onward we were in a Afghan war. Then we had a instability in the region, and then we have a war on terror. So mega foreign direct investment was prevented, or you can say obstructed, because of the geostrategic environment of the region. But after 2013, when we signed, and in 2015, when it started. Naturally, anti-Pakistan forces are not in the interest, in their interest that the CPEC prosper, whether our Eastern neighbor or other non-state actors. Definitely, what is their primary target? The primary target is to bleed the state of Pakistan, and when they are bleeding the state of Pakistan, certainly society is also vulnerable and going to suffer. So the primary objective of this terrorism is not of any political agenda or economic agenda, because if they have an economic agenda, then they can ask with the suggestions that in the CPEC you should have these socio-economic projects. Okay, for that we are struggling. We have an economic terrorism, we have agriculture, we have an environmental terrorism. But their agenda is only to obstruct the development. So that's why they are struggling. The government of Pakistan is also doing its best for controlling it. Second,
so sorry to interrupting. Do we really giving the desired security to the Chinese or the companies working in the special economic zones, working in different regions?
I think that I do not question the sincerity of the government of Pakistan.
Fine.
But as a student of security studies, I am also aware you can't provide a foolproof security to anything.
Okay.
Error of human beings, error of judgment, or especially when you are a theater of the asymmetrical warfare, and especially when the insurgent groups or the radical groups have support from the external elements, then the threat or the terrorism or these militants, they are not your own, they are transnational. When
Fine.
you have to face the transnational, you can hit them with the national policy, the national terrorists. Transnationals requires a transnational approach. So in that context, the government of Pakistan, my understanding is doing its best. But of course, when there are 3-4 countries involved and when there are other forces involved, I think Pakistan has a limited capacity. So in that context, when you find attack on the Chinese have to take into account that government of Pakistan, and that's why Chinese leadership is very much clear about the sincerity of Pakistan. So one cannot question the sincerity of Pakistan, but don't underestimate the modern terrorist groups. They are equally equipped with the Western, you can say, weaponry. They are well trained because of the hardship, and Western weaponry they have received indirectly because of the Afghan war.
Well said. Well, the question arising in my mind comes that do we think the CPEC is turning a Marshall Plan for Pakistan? Not now, actually, exactly, but in the coming 5 or 10 years?
Look, when the Marshall Plan was introduced, it was introduced for the economic uplifting of Europe, which was completely destroyed by the Second World War. But the advantage for them was the implementers, that the Western European states welcomed it, and there was no external threat to them. Unfortunately, it's a bigger project. It's for one state.
So do you think the CPEC is a bigger project than the Marshall Plan?
You can look at, if you go for the analogy,
okay.
One can say it can be having a Marshall Plan impact, but unfortunately, it has a bigger challenges as well. It has a domestic challenge. It has a international challenges. Marshall Plan, when it was executed, the Europeans welcomed it. We Pakistanis welcomed it, but there are a few miscreants which are not welcoming it, and that's why you are seeing these kind of things. But naturally, when you have this kind of a mega economic project, these projects are going to transform socio-economic structures of the state, of the locality. Whenever there is a transformation, it is always, you can say, generate a contest between the status quo and the revivalist forces in that locality. Conflict becomes natural.
Fine, perfect. That's a good analysis. And yes, Doctor, one thing is common. The Western media basically has created hype that CPEC is under attack, and we have seen the big headlines in the international media that CPEC is under attack, CPEC is hurt by the terrorists. how Pakistani government or the stakeholders can reduce this basically a narrative to complete the CPEC projects, especially the special economic zones that basically aims to reduce the unemployment and increase the GDP rate, especially in the context of economic lift.
Look, media is always go for flash news. Media is right. When 5 Chinese are killed, naturally it's a concern. Media highlighted. But did it stop it? No. The government of Pakistan needs to examine, and Pakistani analysts have to take into account, or Pakistani stakeholders. We have to see, before starting in 2015, when the real CPEC project started, where were we? And what happened today? Traveling from Tokham, going on then from this CPEC connectivity through the Dera Ismail Khan, going towards the Gwadar, or the other networks, the other projects which have been completed, the projects from the infrastructure of the transportation connectivity, projects like electricity projects, the projects like other people-to-people contact. We have to see what is the worth of them. Today, 30,000 Pakistani students are studying in China.
Exactly, more than 30,000. The recent report says.
One decade before, how many? This is a big change.
Yes.
Despite we had a 3 to 4 years COVID, you can say, obstacle. Then infrastructure. Then, according to the CPEC projects, we had an early harvest. Then we have economic zones. This what the question which you raised, contribution in the Pakistani GDP or economic activity, it is linked with the economic zones.
Yes.
And that will be the project completed by 2030. Now, in this context, there is a big hurdle. Hurdle is not the security alone. Hurdle is, in the last 5 decades, over 5 decades, Pakistani business community has no experience of working in a competitive environment. We had a monopolistic environment. We had a GSP. We never bring a value addition.
Adding to that, sorry to interrupt, whether the bureaucratic hurdles as well.
We never had this experience. So, if I do not have a value addition in my product, how I will compete with the others? Chinese come with a big industry. My industry is not prepared for it. When you have to build the economic zones will be governed by Pakistanis. Yes, they can bring the investment. They can do the Chinese businessmen come and invest here, where there is a cheap, educated labor. So it's not a Chinese, or it's not, but naturally for that kind of a things, infrastructure. But people were saying, no, Gwadar port is a history. We started working on 2006, then it was delayed in 2004 years, again revisit after CPEC started. What is today? Gwadar port is a reality.
Yeah.
Gwadar International Airport is a reality. Though some people are protesting, doing this is also a reality. 7
special economic zones has already been established.
I recall 2 years back or 1 year back, I was in just 2024 January visiting the Gwadar, and there were Chinese as well and Pakistanis as well. Beautiful port. And the Chinese was laughing with me, and he was telling me that when I used to come earlier, this hotel or there was no residence. Now they have a big development. So please keep in your mind, the development takes generations past. With the injection, you can give a glucose dose to a patient. But for sustainability of the body, whether it's economic body of the state or whether the human body, you need a long-term planning. So it's a long-term. So the Western newspapers or our own newspapers or our discussions in this, yes, alarmist variable is there.
Yeah.
That is the reason behind it. But no, there is no slowdown. There is nothing. Because I do not look at it one day. I look this project critically examining 1 decade process, where we were and where we are.
Fine. Thank you so much, doctor, for joining us today.
Thank you.